Welcome in to the Mile High Hoops podcast. He is Anilo Piro. I am Jake Shapiro, and we're coming to you after the Denver Nuggets knocked off the pesky New Orleans Pelicans 125-118 last night. The Nuggets have a really big battle coming up tomorrow against the Houston Rockets, which we'll get into
on Prime Video.
Oh, it's an NBA Cup clash. Everyone cares about the Cup, and right now the Denver Nuggets are 1-1. Like everyone else in their NBA Cup group, and they have the best point differential. So they could be advancing. We'll get into that and what that could mean. But the Nuggets are coming off a loss to the Bulls and a win against the Pelicans since the last time we talked to you. They did not have the best start to a season in Nuggets history because of that loss to the Bulls. And I thought that loss, we might have learned a couple things, AP.
Yeah, I think so as well. And look, they were, I think, also naturally kind of due for a loss. Like, you're going to lose these games. I remember I actually asked Michael Malone a question. I think it was like 3 years ago. And I know he's not the coach anymore, but they lost like a meaningless game to Chicago in like February. And I was that guy that asked him, like, why do you lose to a lesser team? I don't think I framed it that way. But Malone did not like that question. He gave me a pretty respectful, polite answer, but I could tell when I asked it, he did not like it. But point being, obviously, that's the old, this is the new. You're going to have losses like this. And look, Chicago, you know it. You know, you grew up a Chicago Bull fan and you followed them for a majority of your life as well. They're 7-6 right now, but they're a lot better out of the gate than I think people thought. Josh Giddey and company, but the Nuggets also have their own flaws.
Yeah, the Bulls are a lot better of a team than people think, I think. And, you know, they were coming off a double overtime loss.
I think that's what hurts that loss the most for the Nuggets is the fact that you could have run them off the court.
Right, and Colby White wasn't playing. So it was like there was a couple things, and but they had such a rough road trip. They've been on the road for the circus trip in Chicago for like a month basically already, like literally like 3 weeks. They won again last night to finish the trip. So they end that trip, and they beat Denver and Portland. And as we know, Portland is a tough team this year. Like they're not going down, you know, without a fight. So I really didn't think that loss was bad. However, what I did learn in that game was Cam Johnson just kept doing what he was doing and actually became confident within that game of his role. And I think because of that, where he scores 19 points and hits a couple threes, I think you're starting to see the corner turn on Cam. And you've seen that not only against Chicago, but last night against New Orleans. And maybe that's coming because of Christian Braun's injury, and Christian, his absence puts Cam up the pecking order, something we talked about on this show on Monday. But you see the effect of it, right? Like Cam just is going out and shooting, and he's miking, for lack of a better term. He's just getting in there and going, what's Mike's job? Mike's job is to shoot. You know, Cam's job is simplified because Cam's got to go out there and produce. Cam's just not trying to fit in. Cam's got to produce. And I think it became pretty clear over the last 2 games that Cam is starting to find his footing.
Yeah, no, 100%. And Mark Spears put out a great article online at Anscape, a one-on-one, I believe it was, with Cam. And as kind of Jake alluded to, like, right, shooters shoot. He's just got to shoot himself out of this slump. And, you know, with where he was at in Brooklyn and everything else that's kind of happened to him over the course of his career, it's going to take some time. Look, I think the Nuggets and the more importantly, the fans would have liked Cam Johnson to come in here and be a plug and play type of guy. He will be, I think, as the season goes along. But if you read the story online, just a lot of quotes about being very self-aware and in the moment. And I've had the opportunity to interact with Cam a little bit. He's a very chill dude, like not like Michael Porter Jr. chill, but like down to earth, like kind of like Aaron Gordon. Like that's the same kind of energy that I get from Cam Johnson as a player. So I'm sure he's in his head, you know, about the missing shots and whatnot, but it's not preventing him from taking those open looks, which frankly he has to do just because that's the way that the Nuggets offense runs. But I think Cam Johnson's going to be fine.
I think the diversity in what he does is important, but also the defense, right? And I think that's something we've seen with Cam Johnson here over the course of the season. Even though the shot's not falling, he's shooting 29% from 3. And again, the last 2 games, we've starting to see the corner turn. 1 for 3 against the Pels. He hit 5 threes against the Bulls. The defense has been consistent, and that's one of the reasons why the Denver Nuggets right now, according to defensive rating, are 5th in the NBA, and they were 2nd for a long time. It's because of Cam Johnson's versatility and his hustle and him trying to take on assignments. You know, I really thought this was going to be a Christian and Aaron-led defense, and it will be come playoff time. But Cam is making a case to be like a guy that is really a two-way player, and that's something that's been a surprise because he's been known as an offensive player for most of his career. So, you know, I kept telling people to be patient with Cam. I still think we need to be patient with Cam. We're not going to overreact to these 2 games either, right? I really think the check-in poll on Cam is going to come right around Christmas of what he's contributing, and we'll have a better idea because Christian will have missed about a month by then, and we'll know exactly what Cam Johnson is as a player. So that pecking order thing, I think, is big, and it came up last night, Anilo, because last night sorry about that, in Christian's place, we have Peyton Watson starting, which I think is an interesting decision in itself. You're not starting Tim Hardaway Jr., who started 77 games for the Pistons last year, who went to the playoffs. You're starting Peyton Watson because you do need the defense on the floor. And last night, Aaron Gordon also misses. So not only is Peyton Watson inserted into the starting lineup, but he's actually moved up the pecking order because Zeke Najee's in the starting lineup. So Peyton Watson, de facto, fourth or third banana, depending on what type of offensive set, he absolutely cooks last night. He got his opportunity and just ran with it.
Yeah, I mean, 32 points for Peyton Watson last night, 13 for 19 from the field, including 5 of 9 from 3. And look, David Adelman has talked about it time and time again of like the strides that Peyton Watson made in the offseason, both mentally and physically. And I think, Jake, that's him being rewarded for the work that he put in this offseason. Now, he's also motivated because he's got a potential contract extension, maybe with the Nuggets, maybe not. And correct me if I'm wrong, he's now represented by Clutch Sports.
Yeah, Clutch. That's not a great sign.
LeBron,
though KCP was a Clutch player when he was with the Nuggets.
This is true, but different scenarios, right? KCP on the back nine of his career, whereas Peyton Watson is looking to cash in for the first time. But, it's funny you bring that up, right? Because I have a buddy, I was doing Denver Sports Tonight on the radio last night, and, I'm keeping tabs on the game while I'm on the air. My buddy texts me, and he's like, this is the version of Peyton Watson I love to see. And I'm sure Nuggets fans would love to see this time and time again, but it's nice to see him step up when he's given that opportunity and really show out. I mean, he had a double-double last night as well with the 12 rebounds, dished out 3 assists, and had a steal. So I don't even think argue like the best game of Peyton Watson's NBA career.
Yeah, his first double-double.
Yeah.
Like he literally had a career high in both points and rebounds. And I go back to, I actually saw Peyton's first extended minutes in the NBA. I just happened to be in Phoenix the night that he did that, covering the game for us on Denver Sports. Yeah. So I talked to him after the game, and one of his idols growing up, and we've learned about Peyton more and how he's deeply connected with the basketball community, especially in LA. One of his idols growing up was Kevin Durant. And he has a jersey swap with Kevin Durant after his first extended minutes in the NBA. And I've talked to him over time about like what it means to have that relationship with Kevin Durant. And I've said over and over, I don't think Peyton Watson's Kevin Durant or Kawhi Leonard, but you see it at times where he has that size and that athleticism combination that is so rare and it is so tantalizing. And last night, I think he wasn't as focused defensively because Zeke Najee was primarily focused on Zion Williamson, and it allowed him to do some things offensively, which we don't see. I've always thought Peyton Watson has a really nice shot. It's just his touch around the rim that lacks. And when he gets to that mid-range, he's actually a pretty decent shooter. In his career, he's shooting from the mid-range. Actually hasn't even hit a shot from 10 to 16 feet this year, but he had a stretch during the 23-24 season where he's shooting 52% from the mid-range. Like he had that little 15-foot pull-up that I thought was really valuable. One of the things I really wanted to see from Peyton's game this year improve, and you've seen it not improve, is his finishing around the rim from under 3 feet. He's shooting 53% last year, 55% the year before. No, I'm sorry. He was shooting 66% 2 years ago, 70% last year. This year, he's only shooting 69%. So we're not even seeing necessarily the improvements where Peyton needed to make the improvements. Last night, it all came together, is what I'm saying. It hasn't come together so far this season, but it came together last night. And what it looks like together for Peyton Watson is a really good NBA player.
Well, I think the other thing that people forget, Jake, is, look, he's 23 years old, obviously has some tenure under his belt in the league. But this is also a guy that was really raw coming into the league, barely played in his lone season at UCLA.
Well, and you know why that was, right? Because so UCLA, the team with Jaime Jaquez, Tiger Campbell, really good team. They go to the Final Four. We all know this team, and they bow out a little earlier than expected. And all those guys say, actually, we're going to run it back. We're not going to go out for the draft. And it's not like UCLA is going to dump Peyton Watson, who is a top 100 recruit in the country, a blue chip recruit. So all of a sudden, then Peyton Watson goes from being, I'm going to be a star freshman to, I don't know if I'm going to get on the court because the entire Final Four team is back.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even his own doing of why he didn't play in college.
No, 100%. And look, he was still a guy that the Nuggets ended up taking with their draft pick there in the first round in 2022, based off his raw intangibles, I think, alone, just because you didn't get that sample size that, you get with a lot of these collegiate guys that go to the league. And so I'm not trying to say he's a late bloomer, but he was much more raw as a prospect than a Jaime Jaquez Jr., like just to use that as an example, right? So it's nice to see Peyton Watson coming along. And I think if you're a Nugget fan, look, you're not expecting 32 points tonight. He's not going to get the minutes when the Nuggets are at full strength. But this is a guy that can really, as opposed to the last few years where, Spruce contributor, a little contribution here, contribution there, like this guy on a night in, night out basis could be a real part of your bench and your identity. And so far, that's been the case, man. I mean, I'm looking at his game log from this season, multiple games with double-digit scoring, 32 against New Orleans, 12 against Minnesota, 16 against Indiana, 10 against Golden State. So this is a guy in the scoring department, but also in the defense department that is going to make a real impact for this team this season. And I think that's a great thing.
And you're not even, you just mentioned the defense at the very end.
Right.
That's the thing about Peyton Watson's game that he's best at is he is the best shot blocking wing in the NBA. And now he combines that with an ability to grab 10 rebounds a night, which he's done multiple times this year. I'm not saying he's going to do that every night, but the ability to contribute on the defensive rebounding end, especially for the Nuggets, where they struggled last year. I think they were 22nd last year in defensive rebounding. And this year, if you look at the defensive rebounding stats, they've been much better. On the D board, they are third in the league at defensive rebounding. I don't have the exact percentage in front of me. Defensive rebounding percentage is fifth. And they got rid of Porter. When they traded Porter, one of the things we talked about on the Mile High Hoops podcast was, what are they going to do for rebounding? Well, they've solved it with Jonas Valanciunas coming in with the bench unit and rebounding. And then Peyton Watson has been a big-time rebounder for this team. Bruce also gets in there. Jamal's been a little more gritty as well. So they've made up for the rebounding thing. So they're clearing these defensive possessions after running a zone defense, which is so hard to do. And all of these things combined help showcase Watson as a player that can do all of these different things on defense. And oh yeah, last night he also had a little two-man game with Nikola Jokic. So I've always been a fan of Peyton Watson's game. I've been critical of Peyton Watson's offense and finishing at times because it's so tantalizing the player he can become because of the athleticism, because I know he's a smart guy. Like, I talk to him all the time. I think he's a really bright guy, and he clearly understands basketball based off of what he does on the defensive end. So to see it all come together last night, I was just really happy for him, quite honestly.
Yeah, you and me both. And look, it's against New Orleans. It was the right opportunity to kind of
still an NBA team.
100%. But I think it was the right place, right time for if Peyton Watson, like, I'm not trying to say we should have expected this from him, but like that was the moment for him to break out like he did last night. And so for him to take advantage of that moment, I think speaks to just where he's at as a basketball player right now. A quick side note that I want to throw out there just for fun real quick. I was looking because the Pelicans are terrible. You could have sat essentially one row behind courtside last night for the Nugget game for $200. I just wanted to throw that out there. So for any buddies out there, you want to take your lady on a trip, you can like sit basically courtside and flex at a New Orleans Pelicans game for like the price of a round of golf.
Well, I want to
throw that out there.
I have a lot of flight miles from the playoffs last year, so I'm like trying to burn them. And I told my wife,
let's go to New Orleans, bro.
I told my wife one of the things that's on my bucket list is sit courtside at an NBA game. And one of the things we should use the flight miles on is to pick the Nuggets' cheapest road game and go sit there courtside. So New Orleans, January 13th.
Ooh. It's a good time to go to New Orleans.
Me, your girl, my girl.
This is the New Orleans shirt right here. The crawfish on the shirt. So I went there for the first time in February. Awesome city.
Yeah, I've never been.
I'm itching to go back. Maybe we make it happen. Okay. Cheap flights too.
Beignets.
There's so much good food down. I'm gaining 50 pounds. I think I did gain 50 pounds when I went there the last time. But point being, shout out Peyton Watson.
Do you think that this justifies David Adelman's decision to start him over Tim Hardaway while Christian Brown's gone?
Yeah, I think so. And I think now's the time to do it early in the season. Right? Like, especially when the Nuggets are winning games, and I understand they were coming off the loss against Chicago, but like you want to get these young guys some run. So if you have to throw them in the fire in March and April and in the playoffs, they are battle tested and callous to a certain extent. You don't have to worry about that with Tim Hardaway Jr.
Well, and I think they learned a lot when Reggie was here, right? With Reggie.
Gosh, that feels like a lifetime ago.
Well, and remember how good he was. He was good. The problem is he played so much in the early part of that year, the follow-up to the championship season, he completely ran out of gas down the stretch, and then the Nuggets were screwed. So I think one of the things they're trying to do with Tim is make sure that he actually has energy come playoff time because they know how important his shooting is going to be for the Nuggets. So preserving Tim in whatever ways they can, and obviously they need the defense in the starting lineup because if Peyton's not in it, and especially last night with Aaron out, They literally don't have a defender in the starting lineup. So I think it's the right decision for now, but it's something that I think they're going to want to reassess maybe going on. The thing that really bothered me last night was that Bruce Brown was not starting instead of Zeke Naji. I understand with Zion Williamson, they were trying to get some size to guard Zion, but it became really clear late in that game that Bruce Brown was a better option on that night than Zeke Naji. I'm like completely over Zeke Naji after last night. Like the fact that he couldn't take that opportunity and run with it the same way Peyton Watson did, I thought was really frustrating. So that's something to watch for and how the Nuggets react with that. But remember Bruce in his first stint here, he was a guy that could play 1 through 4. And right now, Bruce has only really been playing 2 and 3. He's really only been playing that wing position, a little bit of backup guard. And I think it really was exposed last night again, like it was again in Portland. The same thing that cost the Nuggets in the last 2 playoffs, the Thunder and the T-Wolves. They need another ball handler, and that they had 20 turnovers last night. Jokic comes out of that game with a foul out, and Jamal Murray is just getting completely stressed out trying to bring the ball up, and he has no relief. There was no one there helping Jamal Murray. Peyton tried at times, but people weren't even in the right spots, and it led to a lot of turnovers. And I don't think the Pelicans were ever going to win that game, but it made it a lot closer than it needed to be. So against the Houston Rockets on Friday, who has a unbelievable defense, a lot of size, a lot of athleticism, that's something that they could use as a pain point against the Nuggets, especially if Aaron Gordon might be a little hobbled.
Yeah, I think that's the one identifiable flaw that opposing teams can kind of identify in the Denver Nuggets, and how they're going to try to address that. We'll see. Like to Jake's point, like whether it's offense or defense, like Zeke Naji's just not giving you anything. Let's hope Aaron Gordon's okay. Doesn't seem like there's any reason to believe that he's not. But yeah, I mean, I the other thing that I think gives me some solace with that, Jake, is I think the Nuggets are very aware of where they stand with their deficiencies. And maybe they're just accepting of that right now.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see if they maneuver some stuff around the trade deadline or try to pick up a free agent or 2 down the line as well. But I think it just kind of is what it is right now. And I'm curious to see how Houston attacks that. It's going to be a great game.
Houston has won 5 in a row. They're the 3rd place team in the West. Nuggets number 2. They're coming off a win last night against the Cavs, who are one of the better teams in the NBA as well. So Houston is at home for a couple of days. They've got the advantage. The Nuggets, this is actually part of a back-to-back. They're back home in Denver on Saturday. This is that stretch we talked about when the schedule came out where the Nuggets don't play consecutive home games in Denver for like a month and a half. Just a brutal schedule. But this is the 2nd best team in the West versus the 3rd best team in the West. And assuming both these teams are relatively healthy tomorrow, this is really the first time we're going to see the Nuggets against a team of consequence in a game that is of consequence with, and we joke about it, but they're playing for $1 million. They are playing for $1 million apiece. These guys do care about it.
That's the equivalent of a McDouble to you and I, for what it's worth. But yeah,
it ain't a McDouble to Peyton Watson.
That's true.
Maybe to Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, but not Peyton Watson.
I was going to make a bad joke. I'm not going to go.
Okay. All right. Well, if the Nuggets win that game, they've got one more NBA Cup game against the Spurs at home. So basically whatever happens in the NBA Cup tomorrow, the Nuggets pretty much need to win that game and win against the Spurs to have a chance to advance in the NBA Cup.
You're dialed. I love your passion for the NBA Cup.
Dude,
I have none.
I love the NBA regular season, and the NBA Cup is just this little thing in it that's making me excited, and everyone's going to forget as soon as it's over, and that's completely okay. But I really do think in the Oklahoma City Thunder's coming of age last year, which is the story of last year and them coming to win the championship, I really think a big moment was them just getting absolutely walloped in the NBA Cup against the Bucks in that championship. I think they learned a lot, and I think the Nuggets, I don't know that I want the Nuggets to go to the championship and play the extra game, but I do think them having games of consequence early can help them learn later on, and that's what I'm looking for, and tomorrow is one of those games of consequence. That's all.
Well said. I have no notes. I completely agree with you.
He's Anilo Piro. I'm Jake Shapiro. Thanks for tuning into the Mile High Hoops podcast. We'll be back Monday, right before Turkey Day. He's going to talk about turkey. He always likes to talk about that turkey.
Manja. I'm ready to go.
All right.